Hey guys, welcome back to, welcome back. We're going to work on 10 and 11. But before we jump into this, I set this problem up, and what we're trying to do in exercise 6-3 is reconcile absorption costing and variable costing net operating incomes. Okay? So the key to understanding this and figuring out what in the world's going on, we got to look at that page 265 and look at exhibit 6-5, right? And basically, what we're going to do is we need to figure out, okay, inventories are increasing or decreasing, right? That's the first thing we need to identify. Are inventories going up or are they going down? If they're going down, we need to remember that absorption costing net operating income is going to be less than variable costing net operating income. Okay, because in that example, we we can assume that units produced were less than the units sold. Okay, if our inventories are increasing, right, we can assume, or we know, when inventories increase, that absorption costing net operating income is greater than variable costing net operating income. In that case, we can assume that units produced are greater than the units sold. Okay? So, as long as we know those two facts, or those four facts basically, we're going to be okay. We can figure this out, right? What we're going to do is we're going to calculate the change in inventory. So I did that. I started with our beginning inventory, and then I plugged in our ending inventory, and I said, okay, what's the change in inventory? Is it going up? Isn't it going down? And if so, by how much? Okay. So year one, we see that inventory is going down by 30 units. Year 2 and 3, inventory is actually increasing. Okay. So what we're trying to figure out here is, what's the change in that fixed manufacturing overhead, and how does that apply to calculating or reconciling variable net operating income with absorption net operating income? Okay? So the first thing we're going to do after you do this, so if you haven't had an opportunity, go ahead and plug in these numbers, or you can do it yourself from the book and the problem. Beginning units, ending units, figure out what the change is, okay? They tell us in the problem that the fixed MOH per unit was constant at $560, okay? So for ending inventory, I have 170 units times my, I'm going to say ending inventory at 560, okay? So my ending inventory in year one is 170. So in a calculator, I'm going to take 170 times my 560. I get 92,500. Or I'm sorry, 95,200. I'm then going to calculate what's the fixed manufacturing overhead in my beginning inventory. Well, that's easy. 200 times 560 gives me $112,000. Okay? When I subtract these two, I see that I have a negative $16,800. Okay? So what's going on here? Well, what's going on is my inventory from the beginning of the year to the end of the year is decreasing, right? It's decreasing. So what do we know about decreasing inventories and their effect on net operating income? Well, again, we know that on page 265 on exhibit 6-5, as inventories decrease, absorption net operating income is less than variable costing net operating income. My variable costing net operating income, which I plugged in and again was given from the problem, is $1,080,400. Absorption costing has to be has to be less than $1,080,400. Why does it have to be less? Because inventory is decreasing in the year. So I'm going to subtract out my 16.8 from my variable net operating income. I get absorption costing of $1,063,600. Okay. I'm going to do the same exact thing with year 2. Year 2, my ending inventory is 180, right? Okay. Well, what is my fixed manufacturing overhead that's in that ending inventory? Well, 180 times the 560 gives me $100,800. I'm going to do the same thing with my beginning inventory. This time, I'm going to take my 170 times my 560, or $560. I end up with $95,200. Okay? The difference between those two is $5,600. What's happening? Inventory in this year is going up. What do I know if inventory goes up? If inventory goes up, my absorption costing NOI has to be higher than my variable NOI. Why? Because there's some cost, fixed manufacturing overhead cost, that isn't being recognized in year 2 under absorption costing. Why? Because it's sitting on the balance sheet and I'll recognize it when I sell it. So I'm going to add $5,600 to the $1,032,400, and I should get $1,038,000. That is my absorption NOI. I'm going to do the same thing for year 3. Ending inventory has 220 units in it. Ending inventory, 220 units times the fixed MOH of 560 gives me $123,200. I calculate my beginning inventory, specifically how much fixed MOH is in beginning inventory of year 3. Well, 180, that's the number of units I have in my beginning inventory, times my $560 fixed MOH, I get $108,000. Okay? That means I have a difference. The change in fixed manufacturing overhead is $22,400. What's happening? Inventory, again, is going up. What do I know if inventory goes up? If inventory goes up, my net operating income under the absorption method has to be higher than my variable NOI. So I'm going to add $996,400 plus $22,400. If my math's right, I get $1,018,800. That was number 10. Now, number 11, it's actually pretty easy, okay? What they want us to do is they want us to prepare the contribution formatted income statement, okay? Super easy to do. What they tell us is they give us enough information to figure out what the sales are, the variable costs, the traceable fixed costs, and they also tell us what the common fixed costs are, okay? They also give us the units sold. So in order for us to figure this out, we know that in weed ban, we're selling 15,000 units. I'm just going to plug that above it just so I have it handy. Weed or green grow, we know we're going to sell $28,000. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out what in the world are my sales. Okay? Well, for weed band, if I'm going to sell 15,000 units, I need to multiply that by the selling price per unit of weed ban, which is $6. I get 90 grand. I'm going to do the same thing with Green Grow. Okay. Green Grow, I sell 28,000 units times the selling price per unit, which is $7.50. I get $210,000. So what is my total company-wide sales? Well, I take 210,000 plus the 90,000. I get $300,000 in sales. Okay. Next, I'm going to subtract out my variable costs. Okay. Now, luckily, in this problem, we don't need to segregate between, cost of goods sold, selling, variable selling, variable administrative. They tell us that, hey, your total variable expenses per unit are $2.50 for weed ban. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. $15,000 times my $2.40. I end up with $36,000. I do the same thing for Green Grow, right? Green Grow. I sell how many? 28,000 units times the variable expense per unit for Green Grow, which is $5.25. I end up with $147,000. Now, to figure out what my total variable costs are for the company, that's easy. I take my $147,000 plus my $36,000. I end up with $183,000. Okay. Now I can figure out what the contribution margin is here. What's my CM? Well, that's easy, right? If I take 300,000, subtract out my 183,000 of variable costs, I get $117,000. But I also need to calculate the contribution margin for weed ban and Green Grow. Well, that's easy. I just do the same thing. What are weed ban sales? $90,000. So I'm going to subtract weed ban's variable cost of $36,000. I get $54,000 of contribution margin. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing for Green Grow. Green Grow has sales of $210,000. I'm going to subtract Green Grow's variable costs of $147,000, and I get $63,000 of contribution margin. Next, I subtract out my traceable fixed costs. Well, I know that weed ban has traceable fixed costs of $45,000. I know that Green Grow has $21,000 of traceable fixed cost. So to figure out what my total traceable fixed costs are, I just add them up. 45,000 plus 21,000 gives me $66,000. Okay. I can now figure out what is my segment margin. Well, for weed ban, the segment margin, $54,000 of traceable of contribution margin minus the traceable fixed cost of $45,000, I get $9,000. What's my segment margin for Green Grow? Well, same thing. Contribution margin of Green Grow is $63,000. I'm going to subtract out the traceable fixed cost of $21,000. I get $42,000. Okay. So what's my total segment margin for the company with all my segments? Well, that's easy. $42,000 plus my $9,000, $51,000. Now I subtract out the common fixed costs. The common fixed cost, the problem tells me, is $33,000. So I'm going to plug that in. Right? Notice I didn't allocate this common fixed cost to each of the departments or each of the divisions. Why? Because common fixed costs never get allocated to the divisions. Okay? So I take my $51,000 of segment margin, subtract out my common fixed costs of $33,000. I end up with $18,000. Oh, wrong spot. I end up with $18,000. And that is my net operating income for the company. When we come back, we're going to look at exercise 12. Okay, we're going to see how do we calculate the company break-wide point in dollars, as well as the break-even point in dollars for the North region and for the South region. So tune back in for that one.